Hey man, how's it going?
Pretty good. It was a good season. Season's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get some mock drafts coming up soon.
There's still the playoffs.
No, after week 14, for like the past 3-4 years, the season ends.
It ends for us, Adam. The other guys have games still.
Oh. And here we are with power rankings, but
Kind of.
not actually going to do power rankings because, hey, there's teams in the playoffs. Teams not in the playoffs, you know where you stand, who's good, who's bad. It's kind of the same for the last while. So we're just going to kind of talk about this end of the season stuff.
Yeah.
So, we do have the first 6 picks of the draft set. It indeed does. James finished with the worst record. Goes to Cherry. Matt, aka Evan, owning the pick, sits at number 2. You at 3. Me at 4. Evan was finished 5th. Pick owned by James. And then Cherry gets a second pick in the top 6, sitting at 1 and 6 currently.
Yeah. So happy for Cherry, man.
Yeah, it was close. I almost lost to James in that last game,
Would have been something.
but I didn't. I won. Wandale was cooking. I do think, obviously, like, there was talk at some points about, like, max points for and stuff. So, James did have the lowest, so I guess his team did not score a lot of points. So
Also helps when like 3 of your guys weren't signed to teams to start the season.
yeah, but I think that just shows, like, hey, man, this team is not the best right now. You would have been second lowest, so you would have actually been at pick 2 if we did it that way. Matt would have been at 3, so you and him would have flopped. Evan would have jumped me and been at 4. Then Cherry would have been 5. I would have been 6 by max points 4. So I sucked at getting my best players out there.
Look at you go.
Look at me go. I do think it's also interesting that the max points 4 difference between Matt 2 and 12 and Evan 6 and 8 was less than 3 points. They basically scored the same amount this season.
Wow.
Well, didn't. Evan scored like 100 more, but they could have, at their peaks, scored about the same, which is interesting. And then obviously Trevor led the way with that with 2,449. Almost 1,000 more than James. So,
Man.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then Trevor did finish as the 3 seed, so he got a pick. And he went with Steve.
I'll say this, not a very clear pick this year when it comes to picking your matchup. Jasmine has strung together a couple good weeks in a row. Steve has a lineup that I don't think is star-studded as, like a Trevor, a Griffin, a Zach, but it could still put up very solid weeks.
Yeah.
Especially when Debo's just going sicko mode right now. So
That is true. I did find this. Yeah. So last week Jasmine put up 153, which actually would have beat Trevor. Steve put up 120. Obviously would have not beat Trevor, so I guess, I don't know if you're thinking of, off that logic of Jasmine has more potential to kind of boom.
yeah,
I guess that makes sense. I'm also pretty sure that if you go through the whole year, last week was the only time throughout the year that Jasmine would have beat Trevor. So if they played 14 times, Trevor would have gone 13-1, And also, I think if he played Steve every week, who he did end up choosing, he would be 14-0. So there was no week this year that Steve has outscored Trevor. Trevor, I don't mean to jinx you right now by saying that, but
Congrats, Steve.
you would be a perfect record against Steve if you did play him every week. Will that continue? I guess that's why they play the games. But who would you have picked?
Probably would have gone with probably Steve. I just think that the Eckler Cup there, if we know they're good, it's just a matter of,
Even Eckler without Herbert?
I mean, on one hand, defenses are probably going to be, just be like, hey, we just got to stop Eckler.
And he's also been bad at running the ball. The Chargers, just like as a whole, haven't been great.
Yeah.
But maybe some checkdowns and opportunities and such.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you're probably going to get more receiving work. Probably going to lean on him a little bit more than they already do. I mean, we'll obviously see tomorrow night's game. It doesn't look great. I'm yawning just thinking about it.
Yeah. And then, I don't know, you do have, like, McBride and Connor. Some tougher matchups versus San Fran. Yeah, I think Steve was probably the choice. I mean, Zach probably never even crossed his mind.
If he did, it'd be something.
The only way that I could see picking, like, a Zach in this situation, or, like, who you think is a better team, is if, like, hey, I have good matchups this week. They don't. Like if you were really going to big brain it.
Get one of the good teams out
Like,
early.
if he had bad matchups and you could beat him there, you feel more confident against these other teams. Again, I don't think you'd risk it. Plus, like, right now, who do you think you fear more, Griff or Ethan?
Griffin.
Yeah, Ethan, like, every pass catching option he has, like, their QB is out or injured or something.
Yeah.
So, plus, like, we found out Keenan is going to be out today. We don't know the severity. Like, will it be multi-week, or is it just because it's a short week? Some stuff like that. But then if you could beat Zach, Griff's probably not going to pick you over the winner of, like, a Steve Jasmus. Like, that's probably getting picked to play Griff. So then you get the easier and, like, matchup, or the matchup you'd probably want in Ethan. I don't know. I don't think it really makes sense, but it is interesting, some strategy wise to think about. If you're like, man, Zach has cakewalk in week 17 if I play him there. But again, probably never even really crossed his mind.
I don't think it did. Yeah. Also, as I kind of bring up occasionally, every year so far we've had a new champion. No one's repeated.
And we're 3-3.
3-3. So hypothetically, a 50% chance, but 1 to 2 of them of the new champions will be going home this week, because Jasmus and Steve and Trevor play each other.
So one of them's guaranteed. Yeah.
And then you have to bank on Jasmus beating Zach. So hypothetically, we could go into the semifinals
with just one tribute.
One tribute.
Standing for the new championship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we'll just get it out of the way now. What are kind of your predictions for the playoffs? Who do you think walking away with the chip? Not like go through every matchup, but like right now, who do you think's winning it all? I think it's a little interesting. Griff, not the same as kind of what we saw with Jasmus last year, but it's like was so dominant, and then these last 2 weeks, probably not like exactly where you think. Like 126 obviously is still good. Week before that, 123, but I think like before that he was averaging like almost like 150, 160 a week. So like a little bit of a fall off. Obviously lost Tank Dell. Jefferson also left the last game early. He did have that 2 weeks in a row, which probably does play a role into it. Two guys that were normally getting 20 got like 2 points each week.
Yeah.
So he would be around that like 140-ish range. But did he like peak too early? Is he slowing down going into the playoffs?
Almost what I'm thinking there.
You could kind of see that with like Ethan too. Again, talked about some of those receivers. Is Tyreek hurt for Trevor? Zach maybe is like the healthiest and looking kind of good now, but also like, again, you said Jasmine's had a really good last 2 weeks. Steve has been just like consistently okay, and it's like maybe if a few things hit right, he could get there. So
yeah, I am gonna go with my new champion as Trevor. He had the rocky start. He's been killing it ever since. He overpassed Griffin in like total record.
yeah.
I gotta rock with wide receiver U. I think this is finally the year they do it. Like you said, I think when it comes down to it, Griffin has a tough choice. If Zach beats Jasmus, it's going to be, do you want to play Zach? Do you want to play Trevor? Who you want? You know, obviously, if Trevor wins and Jasmus wins, I'm probably picking Jasmus.
Yeah, same thing with like Steve and Zach.
Yeah.
Probably picking Steve.
And like we also talked about, the people throwing to Ethan's wide receivers, they're not great. I mean, Jake Browning kind of cooked, but the other guys not so much.
Yeah, I do think it is interesting, though. Like, again, Trevor's running backs a little bit. Jacob's out. Taylor out. Like, he is relying on Zeke, which, to be fair, he did drop 27 last game.
He did.
And is getting volume, so that's obviously, like, good, but running back kind of getting a little bit weak. And I think Tyreek is the big question mark as being, you know, is he the best player in fantasy? Yeah, number 1 overall ranked in fantasy, so if you're losing the best option, that's like really no making up for it. Kind of like what we saw last year when Jasmus lost Cup. It was like, yeah, you lose some of these other guys. Like if you lose a Jacobs and have to fill in with like a Zeke or something, it's like you could survive off that. When you lose someone scoring 25 points a game, you're not going to make that up with one player. Like, it's just not possible. Like, you're going to take some sort of a hit. But, yeah, I think I like the call of Trevor. I'm going to give it to, I'm going to say Zach repeats.
Okay, so not only the first repeat champion, but the first back-to-back champion.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
Zach is another one that where, you know, you have CMC. Probably.
I think that's the thing, and his playoff schedule is Arizona, Baltimore next week, which will be a little bit harder, and Washington. Like, him week 17 versus Washington might put up 1 million. Last time he played Arizona, 48.7 points. He's playing Arizona this week. So I don't know if that bodes well for Jasmus.
I don't think it does.
But, yeah, him, Dak, and CD have just been, again, on the same page. His playoff schedule is Buffalo, Miami, and Detroit. All games that could kind of be like shootouts. And, yeah, I don't know. I think he's got enough depth to survive some injuries, so I do think he might just go ahead and repeat the whole thing. It is also interesting that we didn't pick either of the teams with a bye. So we picked 2 teams that could lose this week. Didn't be like, I'll take one of the ones that only needs to win 2 games. No, we took these guys. But I think it'll be a really close playoffs. I think, too, that this is the year going in that I have the least of an idea.
Yeah.
I think if you said Jasmus or Steve won, I'd be a little bit surprised just because I think those top 4 teams are better, but I wouldn't be like shocked. Like I feel like some years it was like if this team wins a playoff game at all, I'll be like amazed. And then those top 4, I really do think it could go either way. So,
yeah,
very, very interesting.
very interesting indeed.
And are you gonna?
Yeah, so I did it last year. It's the Haters Guide to the Sock League playoffs. And we're going to start where it matters the least. It's a 12 with James. James, you were closer to making the playoffs than you thought. You know, maybe if you just had a guy like, I don't know, Debo or Madison, you maybe could have snuck through there. Anyways, though, your team looked god-awful down the stretch. Some of the worst we might have seen in a while. And that's coming from me. But at least you can go get your Ohio State guy in Marvin when you want to trade for him in 3 years because he's going to be on Cherry's team. Matt, 3 years ago, you had a lot of picks in 2023, and then you named your team 2023 the future. Congrats. Your future was one more win than you got that year. So we're going to congratulate you on
I think it was 2, right?
Or
0-13 to 2 and
I think he had one win that year.
1 or 2.
1 or 2. There was improvement, so we congratulate you there. The future is here now. Can't wait to see what it holds for us.
What the future.
The only difference of next year is that you can actually go down next year.
True.
Ryan, myself.
Yep, 0-13.
Okay, there it is. 0-13.
2 wins.
2 wins.
Clap up for Matt.
The future has arrived. Myself. At the start of the year, you made a video hyping up your team that included the likes of Cam Akers and Kadarius Toney. So you can see where that season went. But we sucked so bad, we sucked at tanking. We went from 1 to 3 in I think 2 weeks. All because we played James and Matt, who are surprisingly worse at this than I am. Number 9, we got Adam. Remember all year how we talked about your division's really weak and you could probably just have a free ride to the playoffs?
Yeah.
And then you immediately go and sold the majority of your players? Does it feel good watching Cortland Sutton catch a touchdown every single week now that he's not on your team anymore?
No, but
okay,
that's the life we live.
That's the life you live. You do that. You also traded Saquon after getting 1,000 points, so little sad, but not as sad as that IR spot in your team that's just open now because he's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's healthy this year. He's not on my team anymore.
And Cherry, you had a very hot start this season. Unfortunately, your team couldn't hang down the stretch, and also you probably used Bijan Robinson more than Arthur Smith did this year, so maybe this number 1 overall pick will be something. Now we get into kind of a team that should be in the playoffs, but isn't. This year, everyone said that this would be the year the Anteaters finally make the playoffs. And then about 4 or 5 knees decided otherwise. It was a risky move trading for J.K. Dobbins, a running back who gets injured every year. And to no one's surprise, he got injured. And Mike Williams came out looking really good and coming off an injury last year. And to no one's surprise, he got injured. But at least down the stretch, you still had Justin Herbert. And, you know how that one goes. Now into the playoff teams. We're going to start at the bottom with Jasmus. Definitely not the same as last year. A little bit tougher this year. Good news, Trevor didn't pick you. Bad news, Zach is just as good. So have fun. Then we got Steve. And Steve promised me Marvin Harrison Jr. And, yeah. I remember a couple people had asked me, they said, hey, what are your thoughts? Like, I'm looking to trade. I might get Steve's 2026 first. And I said, do you think he's going to, not be great by then? And I said, brother, he's going to buy and sell four times between that.
Steve's going to be bad and good 10 times in between that pick.
You are getting pick 1 or pick 12 and nothing in between, okay?
Or anything in between.
So the bad news for you, Trevor did pick you. So your path to, in your first ever playoffs, is going to be pretty tough. Not saying it's impossible, but I think Debo might need to hit 60 this week. Then we move on to Zach. You were in second place in the division for a while. And I have good news. You didn't lose to Matt this year. Although I will say, I do think it's a little strange that once again you had to collude with Adam to make sure you had a really strong team going into the playoffs. It's going to be weird.
Looking out for my guy.
It's going to be really weird seeing whatever player does good for you next year on Zach's team in the playoffs.
It'll be fun.
It'll be fun.
I get half a ring for this.
Does that go with your half a ring for last year?
Yeah, I get a full ring.
Look at him go.
I think it was also almost, this is off topic, but I think almost to the day we made the trade. Because I think we made the Dak one, that was December 3rd, and we made the Kittle one December 4th. And it always starts with me texting him like, hey man, let's win you a championship.
That's going to be in my investigation this offseason. Then we have Ethan. You won your division, so congratulations on your bye week. It wasn't that hard. So, the only unfortunate news is that who is throwing to your wide receivers? Yeah, Jake Browning looks okay, but you're home with Will Levis and not a great look, man. So, just hope that Griffin does what Griffin usually does and picks wrong. And speaking of the man himself, Griffin, you had a pretty good season, best in the league, 12-2. Looking pretty strong. Jefferson, let's hope he gets healthy. But despite how well you do in the playoffs, I just want you to know one thing: you lost to the War Eagles. Now let's head over to matchup previews. And we are back for our first playoff matchup preview. Adam, the regular season's ended. I think I went 0-3 last week.
You went out with a bang.
Yeah.
0-3.
Yeah, you...
None of them were even that close.
No. I just picked what I wanted to happen.
You finished 21-21, 88.9 points. I went 2-1. I was right in myself winning and Trevor winning. Jasmine did pull off the upset against Ethan. I finished 31-21 with 126.8 points. So I think I won this year.
Yeah.
And we'll just talk about the playoff matchups. I don't think we need to go into the playoffs. I don't think there's a way you can come back.
No, unless you made like 100 points per matchup, and even still.
So we'll just talk some shop.
Talk some ball,
Yeah.
So, talk about the most important matchup. The second straight week, we got War Eagles versus Steamrollers.
Yeah, fun.
And then the other consolation bracket is the Dragons versus the Anteaters.
We want to play more weeks, so we're going to lose.
I might be joining you there, but hey, at least we know we get to play Matt and James.
Yeah. And on to what matters.
Yeah, let's go to the ones that we all care about. We'll start off with the closer one. By sleeper projections, I'm not saying it's going to be the closer one, but it is Zach versus Jasmine. Sleeper is giving Zach a 58% chance to win. He's got Dak Prescott against Buffalo. McCaffrey versus Arizona, as Adam mentioned earlier. I think the last time we played Buffalo, we had 40-plus points.
Arizona.
Arizona. Mixing against Minnesota, their run defense is not great. We just discussed Buffalo. Potentially no Devontae Adams against the Chargers defense. But if he plays, we might have a repeat of last year where Zach has a 60-point lead after Thursday.
When he played the Chargers earlier in the year, he put up 15.5, 8 catches, 75 yards. So
a modest game. Kittle also against Arizona.
Last time they went up against each other, he put up only 1.9. They seem to shut him down a little bit.
But Adam Thielen has a tough matchup against... Oh, pardon me.
Ryan's got a tough matchup against Yawn.
Yeah, I have not beaten the sleepyhead allegations. Adam Thielen has a tough matchup against Atlanta.
Who he played early in the year. 2 catches for 12 yards only.
Yeah, and he hasn't been
points.
great recently.
Has not. Hasn't broke 15.5 points since the bye.
Yeah. So, interesting if maybe Aaron Jones plays, maybe Zach flip-flops them, but he's been kind of banged up all year as well.
Maybe he gets Lockett in there.
Looks like Ramondre's probably not going to play. We could see a Tyler Lockett appearance, maybe a Josh Reynolds if he's savvy.
Maybe a Jaden Reed, who a 20-point performance last week. 5 out of his last 5 performances, 19.4, 19.2, 15, 5.6, 20.5 against a weaker Tampa Bay team. Do we see Jaden Reed?
We very well could. And for Jasmus, we got Fields having a tough matchup against Cleveland. The Chan versus the Jets. The Jets' run defense is not great, but I don't think it's terrible.
They're not the best against the run.
Now she's taking out Indianapolis. Depends on which Indianapolis we get. Is it going to be the world beater Indianapolis Colts, or is it going to be the, oh yeah, we don't have Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis Colts. Amari Cooper versus Chicago, primed for a good game. Zay Jones, tough match against Baltimore, but to counteract that, you got Cooper Kupp against Washington. Another not great team. Another tough matchup for Evan Engram against Baltimore. Isaiah Pacheco plays New England, so he also is questionable. And Austin Eckler taking on Vegas. We'll see how he does without Herbert. Other people we could see thrown in there. Gus Edwards, I feel like he has, like earlier this year, had like a 9-game touchdown streak, something like that. Something ridiculous.
But again, as of late, hasn't done much.
And besides that, I think if Jazz doesn't put any of these other guys in, he might be screwed.
Yeah, he played Clyde last week, put up 8.8 when Pacheco was out, so I'm assuming he'd go there. Donta Foreman, again, nothing super exciting. But who do you think will win?
Gonna have to go with Zach.
As am I.
I'm looking at Kittle and McCaffrey against Arizona, and I'm thinking, man.
Yeah, and Montgomery versus Denver. Denver obviously not great versus the run. Will probably find the end zone, as he always seems to. I do think Zach will win, but I think it might be a little bit closer than kind of like we think. Again, just Jasmus has the possibility. Cooper Kupp versus Washington. I think Kupp last week did score 25.5, kind of came back 8 for 115 and a touchdown. And I think I saw something that, like, everybody that plays, like, Washington's defense, if you're, like, the lead guy, you, like, score a touchdown and put up, like, at least, like, almost 20 points. Washington hasn't been good at stopping receivers. But then there was the argument of, is it Puka or Kupp the main guy there? But I think we could see a huge Kupp week that could kind of keep things close. And Eckler, I mean, he scored 21 points last week, which was a huge upgrade after 3 kind of down weeks in a row. Found the end zone pretty good through the air. But, like, what's that offense going to look like? So how much is he kind of going to get used?
I guess we'll have to see. But speaking of Puka, let's go to our next matchup. It is Trevor versus Steve, or wide receiver U versus the Cape Cod Cranberries. Sleeper has this one a little more lopsided with a 61% chance for Trevor to win. Just about a 25-point spread, give or take. Lamar Jackson taking on Jacksonville. Their defense has been uncharacteristically bad the last couple weeks. Kyron versus Washington, another one where could go off.
Good things could happen.
Zeke versus Kansas City is kind of
Yeah.
and Tyreek has a tough matchup and is questionable versus the Jets.
Yeah, last time they went head-to-head, he still put up 25 with a touchdown, so
maybe it's just the Tyreek.
Yeah, Tyreek, he's just matchup dependent. Doesn't matter who you're going up against, he's going to get his.
Michael Pittman is playing Pittsburgh. It's kind of a middle-of-the-road matchup there. As you mentioned, Puka versus Washington. Could be in for a big week. Hawkinson versus Cincinnati, since he's defense also not spectacular. A.J. Brown versus Seattle, another guy that could put up 90. And on the reverse side, DK Metcalf versus Philly. Both those secondaries have been less than ideal this year. But for Steve, we got Sam Howell on the Rams. Rams pass defense, not great. I hear my dad complain about it a lot. You should have heard him when Zay Flowers caught that ball and then was able to get up and keep going before the guys touched him. Let me tell you, I'm surprised you didn't hear him from all the way down there. Saquon against New Orleans is a tough matchup, but they did just surrender 200 rushing yards to the Panthers of all teams. So maybe that bodes well for him. Connor with a tough matchup against San Francisco. Same thing with Trey McBride, the tight end. Debo is playing Arizona, so he could go off again. McLaurin against the Rams. Like we said, the Rams' pass defense is kind of but McLaurin's also been very up and down this year. Not as consistent as we've known him to be. Cooks versus Buffalo is kind of a meh play. Wide receiver 2, 3 there.
Yeah, I guess you could be thinking it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game, so he'll probably at least get a big play.
And then Jerome Ford versus Chicago.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Zach Moss versus Pittsburgh, another kind of shaky matchup there. But I do think Trevor's going to win. A lot of guys I talked about there where I'm like, hey, they could get 60 this week. And I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I wonder if Steve does go to maybe a Jacoby Myers or... Yeah, I don't love Chuba versus Atlanta's pretty good D, but I don't wonder if you go to him thinking hey, he's kind of been the workhorse there, and maybe play him over I don't know. Maybe someone or Myers, get him in, especially if Adams is out, where you're oh, he's the only option. Get him in for Cooks, but they also did show us last week that they could play a whole game and not score any points. Or did they end up... I don't know. They could not score a touchdown easily. He hasn't been super great as of late, but...
See, I knew I was right to be low on him.
Yeah. How's Hunter Renfrow looking?
I don't remember mentioning him.
But... yeah, I do think Trevor will win. Here's a question. Going into the Sunday night game, Steve will be done. His whole team will have played. How many points do you think Trevor will need out of Lamar, A.J. Brown, and DK Metcalf Sunday and Monday night to get the win?
I'm going to be honest with you, brother. If he needs any at all, I'd say it's less than 15.
Less than 15? So
yeah.
You think this will be a blowout?
Yeah. I'm just seeing Puka and Tyreek and Kyron. Those are all really good matchups.
Yeah.
And I'll be a little nicer. We'll say 25.
I did also see something that Nick Mullins, when he was the starter in San Fran, he threw to the tight end. Kittle was getting 15 targets a game. So if he's the starter there for Minnesota might be wheels up for Hawkinson,
Yeah.
who already is kind of like a target hog, has had multiple games over 10 targets this year. Yeah, I might not think it'll be as big of a blowout. I think Trevor probably feels pretty comfortable going into like Sunday, Monday night. I don't know if he already like has the win locked up, but it would be like, man, if this Steve will have like a opportunity of like, hey man, if AJ Brown only gets like one catch and it's a Devonta Smith game, he puts up that 1.8 he had against Kansas City, and if DK, who also can sometimes just like get ejected or disappear, if that happens, there could be a shot that Steve could win. Will it happen? I do not think so, but...
And that does it for matchup previews. Stick around because we have questions from the league and probably an Adam Rambles in there somewhere as well. We'll be right back. And we are back with questions from around the league, playoff edition, or just, just questions. I sent them to Adam. I think we got some good ones this week. Adam, what do we got?
We got questions. All right. Starting off, we'll go Trevor first. He said, is wide receiver U not winning the division the biggest blunder in league history?
Considering who you're sitting next to, I don't know.
I do want to say he has won 3, and we've had like 6 possible you could win, so this would have been his 4th. He is known for winning these divisions, and it could be if he loses like first round where he could have had a bye and then like looks bad, like that was good. Realizes that he would have like won out after losing the first one. Yeah, it's probably a pretty big blunder, but I think he gets through this round. Obviously, doesn't then get to pick his matchup in the second round and stuff, but I think he'll be living just fine, but I'm sure he would have loved to get that 4th banner.
Yeah, it would have been nice.
He also, his follow-up is, will the Anteaters ever make the playoffs? I do want to say Steve has made it already.
Adam, do I gotta remind him again? You want to tell him for me?
This is an Anteater stand.
Thank you. I expect the Anteaters there within the next 2 years. Now, I'm going to be realistic. Right now, the split division, barring any changes that we might make, looks pretty damn good. It looks pretty damn good. And, maybe we have a Zach, or even if maybe Trevor wins this year and he sells, gives the opportunity for myself, Cherry, and Evan to kind of get back into the playoffs, or for Evan to make the playoffs. I would say within the next 2 years, we should see some Anteater playoff football.
He does have pick 2 again this year, adding more fuel to his team.
So either Malik Neighbors or Romeo Odunze, depending on...
Or Marvin. You never know.
You never know.
Or someone else that looks super good through the process
Marvin
and
could
goes to a good spot.
To like the... What's a bad landing spot for Marv?
Patriots.
Yeah, that'd be kind of stinky. That's not even if Marv decides to
come out, which we don't know yet.
We don't know. He said that apparently he got offered 20 to 25 million.
I've heard that was not true.
Okay, well,
but he probably did get offered a good amount of money.
Probably more than like some decent NFL players are getting paid.
Yeah, probably more than anyone drafted in like the 3rd round. But I do not think he would be drafted in the 3rd round.
No, I think he would be drafted with the 3rd pick.
Yeah. Next question. Cherry asked, which of the legitimate contenders would you say this year is championship or bust? Which one do you think has a far worse shot next year at winning the championship?
So, of the, I guess out of the playoff teams, I almost want to say Jasmus. I know it's not really a contender, not really what he's asking, but Jasmus' team, Cup, Eckler, Cooper, the core, they're kind of starting the decline. I feel like if he's going to make some miracle run, this would be it.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I think
I also want to say, like,
I think he has a shot next year, too, as in, like, I don't know, if Cup's healthy and Eckler's healthy and good, like, Pacheco's still young, Chance obviously looks like a possible superstar, and if he's in year 2 looking better, again, who knows? Plus he has some seconds and stuff to kind of add. I think, yeah, he probably doesn't have as good of a shot next year. I also don't think he's like one of the main contenders. He did just sneak in, but
out of the contenders, I would probably say Zach.
I think I would agree.
So Christian McCaffrey, obviously, like, he's good. We know he's good. RB1. He is 27, though. How long can he keep this up? He is getting used a lot. Rightfully so. Joe Mixon is RB6 this year, but he's also 27. Devontae Adams kind of already seeing a little bit of a decline this year. George Kittle, it's kind of not if, it's a when.
Yeah.
And even David Montgomery could see himself being phased out in favor of Gibbs.
Yeah, I feel like Zach's window is kind of very much tied with, like, McCaffrey, as in he's so good at fantasy football, scoring points for it. You're kind of riding that out. And I also think he kind of knows it. I think he knew he won. Obviously, he won last year. And even, like, talking with him about, like, when we made our trade, he was like, I don't really want to give up Matt's pick because, like, that'll probably be pretty good. But I think he's also like, man, my window is, like, right now, like, this is a very good team. I have a shot to win. So, like, why not kind of put those chips into why not put the chips in to go try to win another championship? And it's like, if he goes back to back, I could totally see him just, like, blowing it up anyway. If he loses, I don't know, maybe he tries to hold it out for another year. But if you win 2 in a row and you're like, I kind of got these aging pieces, it seems like a decent time to hit the reset button.
Got the league paid for the next couple years, so,
yeah.
you know.
So I think that could kind of be the case. And that's kind of who I would agree with, too. I think, like, Trevor still has just so many dominant players that aren't, like, going to fall off a cliff. Like, maybe some regress a little, but I think he's still solid. Griff, pretty young team, and just, like, very deep. Kind of has people replacing, and same thing with Ethan. Just has a lot of pieces. I think Ethan's not closing, but I'd say he's probably my second guess. But again, if divisions stay the same, our division is a little bit weaker, so he could probably get back to the playoffs in an easier role than Zach. But Kelsey has finally started to decline. Still the tight end 1, but not the tight end 1 by 10 points like he has been. Keenan, obviously 31. Diggs also hit 30. Hopkins a little bit older. Still does have picks to, like, make moves and stuff. Derrick Henry also almost 30 for a running back. Some of these guys could definitely take steps back. So I think both of them are very eagerly trying to win this year, as is, I mean, every team. But yeah, I think their windows could be the ones to kind of shut a little bit, or maybe they would feel more confident this year. Ethan, he had 2 questions. His first, if the War Eagles are 2 years away, how many years away are the Crusade?
Brother, the team does not look great. I'm trying to be nice to James. He's a good friend of the program, a good friend of mine. But, brother, your starting running backs are Miles Sanders and Dameon Pierce. Just Dameon Pierce got 5 touches. And Miles Sanders lost his job to Chuba Hubbard. Had a pretty decent week last week, but that was his first one in a while. Plus, Odell is not getting younger. Tyler Boyd is not getting younger. His core of London and Pickens, I don't hate. Pickens started out the year pretty good, but then kind of fell off after that. And then your flex is Nelson Aguilar. So,
the one thing I think I've kind of realized is like any team is kind of like one draft away from being good. If you like look at what his picks are this year, he has, again, we talked about it, pick 5, and then the 5th pick in the second round, the first pick in the second round, and another second, plus like an early third here and there. It's like if he walks out of this draft with people just like looking at people from last year that weren't always even like top picks, but it's like, oh, he grabs like a Devon A-Chain with like that middle first, and then that like early second, it's like, oh, he grabs another George Pickens type from like who's gone early second. Late second, he gets like a Tank Dell, and then in the third or fourth, he grabs like a Puka. It's like, oh wow, this team can look very good. Like you just hit one draft and everything kind of falls right for you. It's like, oh wow, that rebuild was really fast. Obviously, you miss on some of those picks, or all of them. At least the first receiver you take, like me every year. The rebuild takes a little bit longer, but I think like, especially like looking at Griff's draft, last year he didn't have a first and only had a few seconds, and it was like, man, he had a Tank Dell and Josh Downs. Like, those are very good pieces for him. Trevor hit on like a CJ Stroud late. Like, you hit on some of these picks, and that rebuild can flip in an instant, but obviously that doesn't happen to everybody. There's only however many good players in each draft, and like being the one to pick all of them is a talent. So I think he does have the possibility to, maybe not in like a year, but like a handful of years, like 2 years. Maybe he's also 2 years away with like a really good draft next year. Kind of gets your whole team's value up. If he hits a few bad drafts, it could be a longer rebuild that you kind of got to just sit through. And his next question: in a hypothetical division of Cherry, Evan, Zach, Trevor, Griff, and Ethan, who would make the playoffs from each division? And I'm assuming he means probably like next year, or just like kind of in general, not like looking at the schedule of like, oh, well, I guess it would be Steve, Jasmus, and me, because we had the 3 best next records. But,
yeah.
So you could answer first.
So the division was Ethan, Evan.
We put Ethan in your division for you.
Okay.
Don't think Evan's making it.
I don't think Cherry's making it. I can see an argument for it.
After like this, if it's like 4 next year, I think he has a decent shot. Again, that's where I get a little bit worried about Zach. Kind of like a situation like that where every team's so good. Also maybe a little bit scared about Ethan, who I also had some concerns about. So maybe Griff, Trevor, and then I think that last playoff spot would be like a bloodbath.
Yeah. It would be between, I would say, Zach, Ethan, maybe throw Cherry in there.
Yeah.
And then the other division, Ryan, Adam, and James.
Well, Steve. I think Steve's got a
It'd be
solid...
really funny if James made the playoffs.
I think Steve's got a solid team.
It would be probably you, Steve, and...
My team, no, I don't know. But after, like, some picks. Yeah, maybe I look better. But Steve, Jasmus. Next year it would be like me, you, and probably Matt fighting for that last playoff spot. I don't know. It would be interesting. Obviously, it wouldn't happen, but it is also crazy that just putting Ethan into that division for you kind of makes it like the loaded division. I guess Evan didn't have the record this year as Jasmus or Steve. Like, they technically have better records and more points scored, so they like were better teams. But I think it's also funny. The guys like putting Evan in the hardest division possible and never letting him make the playoffs. That's a unwritten goal of this league.
Well,
it seems like, except for Ryan. Ryan's doing everything he can to get him there.
I'm saying I'll take Evan with me, and we can send Adam there. Commish. We'll see how quickly we see those commish powers being used. But yeah, is that all the questions, or is there?
That was it, I believe. Where's Ryan? Yes, that was the questions.
All right.
But this question wasn't asked, but it was asked. It was Griff brought up a hypothetical of switching the league to a superflex. And I think that's very interesting.
It would be.
I think there's a ton of cool things, kind of cool ways. I've kind of just been thinking about this since he said it, because it was like, what would be like the fairest way to make this happen? What would kind of be like the turnaround? How do you make the people that have really good QBs because of like trades, like in the past, not knowing, like kind of just collecting good QBs? Like, it shouldn't be, you're just rewarded for like just having them on your team. But I also don't think you should be punished a ton for just having good players on your team. So I've been brainstorming ideas on kind of how to make it fair. And I mean, this will obviously be a vote if everybody's against it, besides like, I think the only answers it got, he obviously brought it up, so he's probably somewhat interested. I think Steve liked it, and you were like, no.
Yeah. But that was prior to knowing that we would have alternate options. I think you and I discussed off camera something along the lines of a backup QB draft where it's like you protect.
Yeah, here's some of the stuff I've been talking about. Again, this will probably be more of like a, once the off season starts and talking about all the rule changes. And again, like, none of this even matters. Like, if half the league's like hard against it, like, it won't really happen. But if people are for it, one of the things is, like, again, it makes QBs valuable, which is cool. And like, I think most leagues are kind of trending towards super flex, like one QB's kind of being more left in the past. I think one QB's maybe a little more popular in redraft, but I think super flex is more common in Dynasty now, especially.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the, like, I'll just kind of talk about it quick. I think it is interesting because, like, you think of it, who your team's, like, solid. James, who's obviously really bad. You basically get, like, a Justin Jefferson added to your team with Mahomes and Hurts. So it's like you get a superstar level player. It would be like getting a Jefferson just by switching the format to that. Obviously, like, so would Griff with Josh Allen and, like, some of these other teams. Like, I mean, those are probably the
top three,
I think, pretty comfortably.
I mean, even think about, like, well, I don't think he has many more. Unless he does, like, think about Evan.
Well, now Griff has Kyler.
So it'd be Kyler and Josh Allen.
That's a pretty good duo.
And even with Steve's team, they're not great quarterbacks, but Jordan Love, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Sam Howell.
And Richardson.
Yeah.
Who's obviously hurt, but coming up. Yeah, I think it could add a lot of... I like new strategy. I like thinking of things. That's, like, part of why I like this. I think it adds a whole new wrinkle. Obviously, it wouldn't be added, like, next year. It would be added, I think he said, like, 2027. I think I could get away even by, like, 2026 or 2025 to integrate it. I was thinking of, like, the first year having it, you make the super flex, if a QB started there, worth, like, depending on how early you started it, like 0.6 or like 0.8 points. So it's like, if a QB there scored you 25, I could just edit their points to only scoring 20. So it's like not as drastic if you don't have that, like, elite QB, but, like, you still get it. So it kind of, like, eases it in more and makes flexes kind of more possible to still start there for the first year, and then it kind of then gets off of it in like either the year after, depending on when, but something along the lines of that, just to not be like, oh, now you just have two good QBs, you're nasty. Still, like, if it's just an okay QB, if it's Derek Carr getting you like 10, oh, now it's actually 8, and like maybe a flex is better, so that would be a whole different strategy thing. And yeah, we kind of talked about like everybody getting to keep one QB, like you get to hold one, and then all the other QBs are kind of put into a draft. But then I think I'd also have a way for you to be able to like keep a second QB. Like I'm sure Griff would want to keep Kyler. I'm sure Trevor would want to keep, like he'd probably keep Stroud or Lamar. He'd want to keep the other one. So there would be a way to keep two, but like you'd probably have to give up like a future pick or something. And then that pick would then take that QB spot in the draft, and then kind of have the draft order be from like, that's kind of why I asked about like keep, trade, cut and stuff, just to see like non-biased rankings and value, like whoever has the lowest value of like player kept type thing. So it's like, I think right now it would be like Matt, who would keep like Bryce Young or Will Levis. He'd get like the first pick out of the extra QBs. And it's also like, again, if you're not adding it the next year, how much do you think about it? Like youth wise, everybody would have tough decisions of like, do I want to, and I don't know, I haven't like fully worked it out, and I'd obviously get input, but maybe like if Trevor's going to keep Stroud and Lamar, he has to give up just like say a future first round pick or something to keep one of them, because they're basically like top 10 assets. Then if you're keeping like maybe like a 10 to 15 guy, you need to give up a second or a third, which is like obviously cheaper than what they're valued for. If we turn to a super flex, Stroud would probably get you 2 firsts plus more immediately. Yeah. So like giving up 1 first to keep him, not the worst. But then Matt also gets to pick like, hey, do I want to just take this pick, or do I want to get one of these QBs? You kind of get to go through the draft. Do I want to keep this guy and give up a pick and move my pick down? Or if I don't take him, like, could he still be there? I think it could add some cool strategy and stuff. But again, this is more off-season voting. Same thing. James brought up the switching to, like, max points for instead of record. Again, I think I see pros and cons of both.
Yeah.
Of, like, I mean, it's your decision to set your lineup. It kind of limits some of the, like, tanking possibility of, like, sitting a good guy, because if he still goes off on your bench, he's still getting points. But I also think there is strategy of, hey, I got these 2 close guys and I kind of want to lose. Hopefully this guy is like, no one thinks it's crazy if you sit like Gabe Davis for Christian Watson, like if that was the choice. And then if you're like, man, hopefully Watson gets the 0 this week and Gabe goes off, like,
yeah,
where you make those decisions.
But I think it's my argument against it is like, say you have something like what happened to Ethan last year. Would these max, it would only be for the top 6, correct?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, but say like you just have a really unlucky schedule, like you're scoring a lot of points, but you finish 4-10. But because your team was scoring points but losing still, you would have had pick 2, but now you have pick 6 because you had the most.
Well, that would be like me this year. I'd fall from 4 to 6, so not a ton. But I guess that kind of shows, like, maybe my team's better than this team because of kind of like how it worked out. And I just like kind of got unlucky with my schedule. I think I said it, or maybe I just like texted something about it. But yeah, I'm like 9-5 with Ethan's schedule. With mine, I'm 5-9. So it's like everything could have flipped, and I could have been way better with just like a more favorable schedule. And I think it shows like, hey, if your team at its best is still worse than all of these other teams, you probably deserve it more than like Cherry, who has a good team but just didn't make the playoffs, or Cherry has a good team, but then just always started the wrong person and had a little bit unlucky, and then ended up with pick 1 compared to, oh, this team stinks, but they somehow won 2 games because they put up the second least, and the team that they played the team that put up the least. Like the all play records, it was like you, James, and Matt were clearly the worst 3. You actually had the worst possible record. So like James 1 win more than you, Matt a few wins more. But then yeah, like me and Cherry were above Evan, so maybe like should Evan have technically, like maybe he at his peak could have done worse than everybody. I don't know. I get the points for both of them, and that's something we'd also bring up. Wouldn't probably change most drafts a ton, but there would be some kind of difference in it.
Yeah.
But obviously these are looking forward to more rule changey type stuff. Same thing with the divisions, and if we change those or if we add the extra playoff spot, but just something for people to think about. Again, I could think about these, come up with all this stuff, and then like have the league again. It's just like, oh no, I'm actually good on this, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess we'll just stay here. But you never know what could change in the off season.
We don't. We're not there yet.
We are limiting the taxis next year to only players drafted. We are adding the flex, so.
And we are adding the 4th round.
Yeah, we did add it so you could trade the picks, but I haven't actually had a draft with the 4th round yet. So I think it will be very interesting. Talk about it more in the off season. Just want people to have some idea, so when it's like time to vote, they're not like, I have no idea. I haven't thought about this at all. But that's about what I wanted to say. Just talk about some of those, because once Griff brought up Superflex, I have thought about that so much of like, how could we make that work? Would we? How would this go? How would this go? What was your original thought of no?
I just thought it breaks the market too much because, like, think about, like, I was considering trading Jalen Hurts for Stroud in the 3rd.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think it makes it. I think that's what Evan said too. He's like, I'd regret trading Kyler, but then I think you add a kind of like that. Plus, if you have like, if we did it for 2026 or something, and it's like you have this whole off season, the next whole off season, and the off season after that, so you have 3 years of, or I think Griff even said 2027. So you'd have 4 years of picks and trades and stuff to. Like Aaron Rodgers probably wouldn't go up in value because he's probably not playing by the time the Superflex starts. Plus, it would be interesting how fast would a draft switch. Like, would someone just be like, I'm just going to win while it's 1 QB and not care about QBs and trade QBs away to get better right now? And then once that comes, I'll rebuild then. Where would Caleb and Drake May go in a draft of now where it's like, yeah, you could get this guy early, but again, you're not really going to be able to use him for 2-3 seasons. Like, but then his value could go up crazy. I think it would have things kind of flying all over the place, make it really interesting. Things would get a little crazy. Some of these trades we'd see people going all in for QBs and trading for them, and people still staying in the 1 QB mindset and being like, let me win now. I think it could add a whole bunch of just craziness, and I'm for people thinking out of the box and getting crazy. But we'll obviously see more in the offseason. Now we just got to worry about these playoffs. 2 interesting matchups this week, and we will see you next week with those results.